The world is getting smaller. Growing up in a fishing town outside of Manila, I never thought I'll have the opportunity to be able to live outside of my country. It is now the information age. The amount of data that's available for us to review has exponentially increased. I've came to learn that they're now using drones to do inventory count. There is probably a war on talent. It seems like everybody wanted a result, but nobody wants to invest. No one really knows what's happening now. The fight on cybersecurity should be no one's fight alone.
With audit being a department where you're looking to make constant improvements to the business, constantly reduce risks, which are always adapting and evolving. And as we spoke in quite a lot of detail, the use of data analytics, being able to allow audit to do a lot more in a shorter period of time. Companies and their executives seem to be using technology, AI, all aspects of it to constantly reevaluate their business and potentially reposition their company to protect themselves from downturns. Company executives, I think it was reported by EY, are now reviewing their business and portfolios minimum quarterly, sometimes every month now, because the technology allows them to do this much quicker and highlight risks as well. Do you think the future in audit will have a big role to play in protecting the business from downturns that would either be caused by political change or simple economic change or a downright aggressive recession? Can audit have a big role to play in this?
Yeah, and I think the important component of audit is really on the risk assessment, right? The way you build your risk assessment, whether it includes those geopolitical risk or any other bigger macroeconomic factors into your risk assessment, brings value to your work as an auditor. If some of your engagement are focused on this risk, then management would be able to evaluate the results of your audit, focus on those bigger risks or macro environmental risk, if I may. And also, I would say, using machine learning and artificial intelligence by the companies, it's really hard to audit because the machines, no one really knows what's happening in them because the machine is constantly learning. And so what we need to do as an auditor is to put guardrails to make sure that what the machine is doing is ethical and within the bounds of what the organization wanted to do, as well as this technology are big investment for the company. So to make sure that the desired results of the model are within the level that we're expecting, and then calibrate if necessary and change the model if necessary. And that's what the regulators are expecting. That's what the shareholders are expecting. And that's what the auditors should be focusing as more technology are being implemented in the company.
With the constant evaluation and risk assessment of the business, cybersecurity is probably one of the biggest topics at the moment, has been for quite some time. When you look at one of the biggest hacks at Yahoo, where I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was millions and millions of account details. Companies seem to be doing a lot more now to protect data and technology assets. Do you think the world And the corporate world is calling for more collaboration between businesses to help protect each other, and also more collaboration between the government and the corporate world as well to ensure that we become more protected moving forward.
Yes, for sure. I mean, the fight on cybersecurity should be no one's fight alone, right? We should be sharing information as to the vulnerability within a technology. It could be a router, it could be a switch. And the sooner that the industry knows about it, the sooner we could stop the threat and attacks. I like the proposition of having government involved as well in the partnership, because a lot of the bigger threat in cyber are really state nation, which has more resources. They're relentless in their attempt to attack. And so it's not just a business risk anymore. The government needs to collaborate with all the businesses on how they could support our fight against cyber attacks. And the more we know about this, the more intelligent or the more sophisticated our firewalls would become, the more sophisticated our response would be. And so I guess really collaboration with the business and having the government join that, to triage whatever is happening or whatever developments in cyber threat would be really helpful for the ecosystems.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with that happening is that quite often companies will feel more shame after it happens to them, and it will require, and which is normal, it will require a huge amount of humility for a business to hold up their hands and say, this happened, we are going to share this immediately to help protect, and in return, hoping that other businesses will do the same. And in a perfect world, that would happen. It sounds like in order for the corporate world to become stronger in cybersecurity, it almost requires, like the United Nations, like United Corporations, where there is an agreement that those involved will share information and where they find weaknesses in their business that other companies might be able to benefit from, and it will help everybody get stronger. Every business appears to be fighting the same fight, and as you've correctly said, doing it alone, it doesn't really benefit yourself. Do you think that there's a possibility for a platform or the organization of corporations that can buy into that setup where information is shared with each other?
I don't see any reason why not, right? As long as the cost of protecting the company is exponentially increasing. So if having a cooperation among all these businesses could bring that cost down and make the whole system more secure, I think any executive would buy into that. But also with protecting the business without exposing themselves as well by doing this process.
Okay, I want to kind of move more towards back towards the career side of auditing. What do you think makes a good auditor?
It's a good question. I think there is a personality or a profile of an auditor. And the first thing that comes to mind is having an inquisitive personality. It's not just being curious, but to be genuinely curious to understand how things work. Because an auditor should never stop in terms of understanding the surface level. We always need to go deep down and understand what are the intricacies within the process and how does it impact a different process. The other characteristic I would say is to be an excellent communicator, because you could be dealing with someone with like a process owner who is very into detail,
Sure.
but then you are reporting to senior management who does not really care about the detail, but more in like the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So being able to shift the conversation depending on who your audience is a good quality of an auditor.
Okay, I think perseverance is actually one that a lot of people talk about, but it's something that is true perseverance, like you say, not just to look at the surface, but to not to check that box, but to really dig deep and understand the process, the challenges, potential areas of improvement. It's one of the biggest complaints that I hear from audit leaders if someone is struggling in the team, which I've spoke about in other interviews, that I've had a role earlier on in my career before I started in recruitment that I really struggled in. It happens, and it happens in audit. And perseverance seems to be the one that really can cause the most issues, where the opportunity of an audit isn't filled and isn't utilized as much. For younger auditors or for professionals thinking about getting into the audit profession, if there was a young audit professional or someone thinking about getting into it here today, and they asked you for your advice in a few sentences, what would be the main points of advice that you would give them?
I think that's an interesting question because I actually have a much younger brother, 14 years younger than me, who just became a CPA.
Oh, wow.
And asked for advice. And my advice to him, I could only tell him what I know because that was my path. And I've encouraged him to join the Big Four so that he would have a breadth of exposure in terms of industry and the things that he can do, and then make a decision on which path to pursue. Because the Big Four allows you that breadth of exposure. And then from there on, I think he could make his own decision on which path to pursue.
So really, if they're not already in the Big Four, it really is the best starting block. It's the best foundation by the sounds of it from your perspective. And what about professionals who are considering an opportunity outside of their home country? Because, you will know this better than most. The idea of relocating is much easier than the reality of relocating, because the idea often brings your research of look at the culture, look at the foods they have, look at all the people are fantastic. But even when that's the case, the reality of doing it can be lonely in the beginning. There can be a wave of emotion sometimes as well, and especially the first time you do it. So what advice would you give somebody who is seriously considering leaving their home country to get that experience outside their home comforts?
I would say that don't do it just for the sake of doing it. There should be a deeper meaning for you to live outside of your country, whether it's for your own personal growth or to pursue an opportunity and to help your family. Those are like really deeper meaning for living abroad. I remember when I moved to New York in the middle of winter, moving from Singapore, the harsh reality was like in the first few weeks came at me. Moving from a tropical paradise to the streets of New York, where I actually say everything was filthy back then for me. And it was like in the middle of winter, so it was so cold. So a few days I've asked myself, like, why did I do this? And it came back to the purpose of like why I'm doing this. So to have a deeper purpose for self-growth and pursuing your dreams, that would help you persevere or push through the hardships of living overseas.
Yeah, one of the things that I always ask, and audit professionals are sometimes surprised by the personal questions I will ask during an initial discussion with them about an opportunity. And if the opportunity requires a relocation, even from, let's say, Germany to France, which is still a big move, but they're very close. It doesn't matter. If there's a relocation involved, I will always ask, have you spoke about this with your family? Because it is something that requires so much support and motivation. And I think to succeed, you need that. Otherwise, it's so much harder. And people need to be bought into your motivations for doing it. But certainly from speaking to people like yourself who have done it successfully, it's a great advert. It's a great advert for young professionals to say, you can do it. It's not easy, but you can definitely do it. Do you think it's something that every leader, in terms of, let's just say, audit, do you think every audit leader should have experience outside their home comforts before reaching that level?
It would help. A lot of companies talk about diversity, right? And diversity in experience, I think, would bring a different component into your leadership, style. So having exposure with a culture that's so foreign to you develops or cultivates that sense of respect for different person or belief or social status. And I think having that experience could be value adding, not necessarily important, but it definitely adds value.
Fantastic. I think it really depends on the environment you're in and the environment you want to be in moving forward. I've known many leaders, a few names come into my head already, where there's one individual that was an audit director for one of my clients who had worked in Brazil, Houston, Paris, Italy, London. I mean, he'd been all over the world with family, with children. Sometimes they stayed behind with, school commitments and things, and it was fascinating to watch his career. But I've also seen many other leaders be hugely successful, who have stayed within their home country or stayed within their home state or city and done very, very well for themselves. It's something as a recruiter in audit, it's something I like to promote if somebody is genuinely interested in it. In terms of recruitment, if you were looking to bring in an audit professional, would you focus more on having the data analytics experience or genuine interest and essentially develop or teach them the audit side? Or would you rather have somebody with the audit experience where you can teach them the data analytics and technology side?
I think it depends on where the organization is in terms of its journey through data analytics maturity model, right? I would say I've done both, where I've built my team with a data analytics mindset in mind, because the model is to have everyone as a data analyst. And I've also built where my data analytics team is a centralized function. Therefore, they don't necessarily need to have an audit background. So they could be programmers, statisticians, to do more advanced data analytics. And then complement that business knowledge by partnering them with auditors. And so I don't think there really is one answer, but more of what is your strategy towards data analytics. And if everyone wants to learn more, I think is more important question. The person's learning ability, whether it's learning the business or learning data analytics, that's what I'm more keen on when hiring people.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, I would like to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Your insights and the experience that you've shared has been fantastic. I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy listening to it. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this today. If you enjoyed today's interview, please make sure you click the like button below. And I'm interested to hear from you. If you have any comments on what's been discussed today, please comment down below. I'd be very interested in hearing what you have to say. And to make sure that you don't miss next week's episode on the world of audit, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hi there, me again. I just wanted to take one moment to talk to you about My Job Search, which is a self-help ebook I've created to help you manage your own recruitment process from the very beginning of creating your CV and understanding what you want out of your career, through the middle section of interview preparation and tips, right to the very end of negotiating salaries and potentially dealing with counter offers from your current employer. Now, this is going to be available on Amazon. The link's going to be in the description below. And if you don't have a Kindle, don't worry, you just need to download the app. Until next time, bye-bye.